There are few games as iconic and charming as Call of Duty Zombies. A mode that was never even meant to exist managed to become a staple of my childhood and many others. Treyarch's creativity and passion for this mode are unmatched by any other series, in my opinion. Few aspects of this game are as unique as the main quest Easter eggs. Everyone has memories of completing these quests with their friends, and today we will be starting a journey to analyze every Easter egg in the game's history. Hello, this is Jackpot, and welcome to a new series on my channel. I've been wanting to create a retrospective focusing on Easter eggs for a while, but I couldn't think of a better time than right now. With Black Ops Gulf War releasing in the fall, I think it's a great idea to take a look back at some of these classic experiences and discuss how these Easter eggs hold up to today's harsh standards. Since this is a first episode, I'd like to take a moment to discuss how I will be structuring these videos and how I will be creating 3 separate tier lists to rank each one of these Easter eggs. To start, we will be covering the gameplay and replayability of each Easter egg, as I believe this is the most important aspect of each quest. The ability to keep the player coming back over and over again is crucial. Then we will be diving into how the core mechanics on each map mesh with the Easter eggs. In my opinion, it is extremely important to incorporate the wonder weapons, equipment, and aesthetic of each map with the Easter egg. We will also be breaking down the story of each map's main quest and the significance of that in a timeline as a whole. Finally, we will be summarizing each quest and ranking them by using 3 different tier lists. One for gameplay or replayability, one for story and significance, and one for difficulty. I feel that you can't lump these Easter eggs into one category because of how many aspects there are to them. With all that out of the way, let's travel through space and time to the infamous Morgue City, also known as Shadows of Evil. Few zombies maps capture a clear purpose and atmosphere the way Shadows of Evil does. I don't even know where to start with this map. The soundtrack, the music, the characters, the dialogue, the weapons, the story, it's all beautifully sewn together by Treyarch to create an absolute masterpiece to kick off Black Ops 3. First, let me explain how this map's mechanics flow into the Easter egg and persuades the player to complete this egg. You start off every game with the Shadow Man talking in your ear. He urges the player to begin the rituals and charge the summoning key. As the player gets overrun by zombies in his abandoned city, there is no choice but to obey the Shadow Man. I love how the core gameplay elements like Pack-a-Punch, Power, and the Specialist weapon all flow into the story effortlessly. This game also gives the players freedom to pick which rituals to do and doesn't force a specific order. This gives Shadows a feeling of freedom and exploration that you don't get in many other Zombies maps. After completing the rituals, the player is allowed into a secret room hidden by a wall with some apothecant symbols on it. The Shadow Man's urgency to force the players into completing the final ritual and fighting against the uncorrupted keepers gives a feeling of uncertainty and doubt creeping into the player's mind. After completing it, the player quickly finds out that the Shadow Man tricked them, and he reveals his sinister, squid-like form, taking away the summoning key and disappearing into thin air, leaving the player behind with nothing but the Pack-a-Punch machine and the 3-headed beast also known as the Margwa, the greatest boss in COD Zombies history in my opinion. After slaying it, the player is then forced to take the side of the Keepers. This is where the Redeemed Sword quest comes in. I love how the game makes you switch sides and try to undo what you unleashed by granting the Shadow Man true power. You go around the map and activate more rituals, but these are much different. This time the game makes you take down the Apothecants instead of the Keepers, to cleanse not just your specialist weapon, but your conscience as well. After going through this process and setting up on the map, there's only one more step that separates you from an epic showdown with the Shadow Man himself. This is why Shadows of Evil shines to this day. This map's core mechanics are so fun and rewarding that it doesn't feel like a main quest Easter egg. It's like all of a sudden you're done and you're ready to fight the Shadow Man. It's a unique feeling and a much needed change of pace for zombies in my opinion. Their boss fight is simple, yet cinematic and beautiful. The satisfaction of trapping the Shadow Man inside the summoning key and ending the chaos is incredible. This is the end of the egg for solo players. However, with 4 players, there is one more step. Maybe the only mistake Shadows makes is locking the cutscene for solo players. The step requires 3 players around the map to shock random boxes in beast mode. Then the 4th player must shock the gate worms to have the random laser beam come from the sky and end the Shadows of Evil Easter egg. I dislike this step because it makes this Easter egg a little less rewarding on solo, and makes communication nightmare in a 4-player game. However, the gameplay is still great and meshes with the story like no other, making Shadows of Evil one of the most replayable maps of all time. Now let's discuss said story. Shadows of Evil, like much of Black Ops 3, revolves around the theme of grief, death, and how greed manages to consume people. This map takes place in a dimension called Dimension 63. The leader of the Apothicons, also known as the Shadow Man, was traveling between dimensions trying to acquire the Summoning Key, an ancient artifact that would allow him to release the Apothicons from the Dark Ether and bring them into the multiverse. He hired a reporter in every dimension he traveled through, asking the reporter to find the box with the summoning key inside. He also asked the reporter for information on 4 people in Morgue City: Nero Blackstone, Floyd Campbell, Jackie Vincent, and Jessica Rose. Our 4 main characters got manipulated by the Shadow Man into committing multiple murders. This exposition brings us to Nero Blackstone, a failed magician, which might be an understatement, who was mocked in a newspaper as the world's worst, and was in a horrible relationship with his wife, who was ashamed of him because of his failure. He grew a hatred for her that the Shadow Man was then able to exploit. The Shadow Man disguised himself as a company executive, then contacted Nero's lawyer, saying that Nero's wife had him in a massive amount of financial debt. This pushed Nero over the edge when he found out, and he decided to kill his wife during a so-called magic trick gone wrong. He then planned to use her life insurance to pay off his debt. The next character we're going to be talking about is...
Fucking send that to Jackie fucking Vincent!
Oh, yeah, Jackie Vincent. He was a struggling police officer living paycheck to paycheck. He eventually became crooked and started taking bribes from different mobsters and criminals for some financial relief. The Morgue City mayor ordered an investigation into the police department. During this investigation, the Shadow Man posed as an internal affairs officer and tried to get Jackie's partner to tell him the truth about Jack's crooked practices. However, his partner remained loyal and he didn't tell anybody about Jackie's crimes. Jackie, however, grew paranoid about a former co-worker. He feared that he would rat him out to the people conducting the investigation. He shot him in an alley and hid the body out of desperation, all because the Shadow Man manipulated him. Floyd Campbell was a boxer who wanted to become a champion, not for the achievement or satisfaction, but for money and public recognition. However, his lack of good motives held him back despite having promising talents. After 18 months without a fight scheduled, Floyd became hopeless and desperate for success. His promoter managed to land him a fight against a contender named Tony King. The Shadow Man gets involved yet again, this time disguised as a journalist. He tells Floyd's promoter that he's a journeyman fighter, and that he isn't capable of winning against great competition. The promoter became nervous that he wouldn't get any money if Campbell lost the fight. When Floyd found out, it drove him mad. He decided to resort to wearing brass knuckles in his fight against Tony King. He beat him to death at the beginning of the fight, becoming a champion by cheating and earning the fame and fortune he sought. Unfortunately, at the ultimate cost, his dignity. This brings us to our final character, Jessica Rose, a young actress aspiring to get a dream role in Hollywood. Her career was on a downward spiral, and she was unable to get cast in any significant roles. She got stuck being a burlesque dancer in Morgue City. The Shadow Man, this time disguised as a director, contacted Jessica's agent, telling him that he had a lead role for her in an upcoming role in a Hollywood film. The reason the Shadow Man did this is because there was a photographer that had pictures of Jessica that would, well, let's just say, compromise her chance of a career in film. Jessica became desperate and invited the photographer into her apartment. She created a trap and murdered the man by stabbing him with scissors. Shadows of Evil would not be a zombies map without Edward Richtofen making his appearance. The Shadow Man's reporter came into contact with Dr. Monty. Monty told him to protect the summoning key with his life, and then sent the uncorrupted keepers to acquire it from the reporter. Richtofen wanted to get it for himself so he could use it to preserve his own soul, but the reporter would not give it to him. Richtofen then stabbed the reporter to death and tried to take the summoning key, but he could not open this seemingly magical box. Then he decided to leave. The Shadow Man's plan was going perfectly. One night, while Jessica was performing in front of our characters, the Shadow Man spiked their drinks, causing them all to pass out. They woke up in a hellish version of Morgue City with strange marks on their arms. Zombies attacked them from every direction, and they were forced to fight for their lives. The Shadow Man convinced them that this was a punishment for their sins, that they had to complete these rituals to cleanse their souls and clear their conscience. He manipulated them into charging the summoning key and allowing him to release the Apothecons into Dimension 63. After managing to stay alive, the characters teamed up with the Keepers to fight the Shadow Man, take back the summoning key, and trap him along with the rest of the Apothecons inside it. They successfully trapped the Shadow Man and gave the key back to the Keepers. This is when the final cutscene takes place. Richtofen opens a portal into Morgue City, sneakily snatches the summoning key, says this:
I'm so sorry. I really don't have time to explain. I have a universe to set right. Thank you and goodbye.
After Richtofen leaves, there is no way to trap these Apothecons in the summoning key. He completely ruins the Keeper's plan in this moment, and Dimension 63, along with our characters, are destroyed by the Apothecons. Now I would like to transition into a summary for me, kind of just how I feel about the story. I love the way the story is structured. It allows casual fans to understand the simple concepts like the characters paying for their sin, their greed, and their destruction, while it simultaneously gives the hardcore fans like myself an introduction to an entire new world for zombies, with the introduction to the Shadow Man and the Apothecons. It shows the player what our premise crew will be up against for the rest of Black Ops 3, and it sets the standard for the mode brilliantly. With the story out of the way, let's get into what everybody has been waiting for, the tier lists. To start with the gameplay tier list, I believe Shadows of Evil falls into an A tier. There is a strong argument to put this in directly into S, so just know that if that's your opinion, I could easily agree, but I feel that the final step manages to drag down this Easter egg an entire tier. Not being able to complete the quest on solo, or even 2 or 3 player, makes me come back to this Easter egg much less than the other Easter eggs in Black Ops 3. However, the way the core mechanics of the map flow into the Easter eggs so perfectly makes this map an easy A tier, based on Easter egg gameplay and gameplay alone. For our story tier list, I have no doubt where Shadows of Evil deserves to be placed. It is going directly into the S tier. The introduction of the Shadow Man, the Keepers, and the Apothecons adds on to this fantastic aesthetic that beautifully captures the Chicago-style setting of Morgue City. The new characters go on an interesting journey that compromises their morality and their dignity. The theme of how greed can destroy people from the inside out is used to perfect this story. Also, how even after the characters did the right thing, their crimes were never forgiven and they were still doomed. Despite the Shadow Man manipulating them, he was correct. If they didn't kill to benefit themselves, he never would have been able to trap them. I could keep talking about how much I enjoy this story for hours, but hey, we need to get into the final tier list here. The difficulty tier list. With S being the most difficult and F being the easiest, I believe that Shadows deserves a C tier in difficulty. The flag step can be challenging for new players, and the timing of the boss fight takes time to perfect, but it's still much easier than some of the Easter eggs we'll be getting into throughout BO3 and especially Black Ops 4. To wrap up this list, I would like to thank everyone for watching. I recommend giving this map a chance if you haven't, as I've seen a narrative going around that this map is too complicated and maybe too convoluted, and it really isn't. Once you learn how to get through the rituals and build the sword, it's really a fun experience to this day, and it holds up graphically. I mean, as we've talked about, this map has some great aesthetics, so I really recommend giving it a chance. Also, please make sure to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this. I guess next we will be going to the